folks. Welcome to No Tech Talk with Barb, tips, advice, and consulting for your business's IT. I'm your host, Barb Paluszkiewicz, and for those of you taking notes, Paluszkiewicz is spelled the exact way it sounds. Paluszkiewicz. Trust and verify at CDNTechnologies.com. What we're going to talk to you about today with my friend Nick Espinosa is TikToks. Essentially, the privacy or the lack of, and where all of this information is going that's on these software apps that your kids are downloading and the security of it. So essentially, this podcast is for you. If you have a child who's dancing around, can't sit still, and is constantly doing TikToks everywhere it is that they go as they're waiting for you or waiting for something in class and so on and so forth. At any time during this show, you can reach out to me at No Tech Talk. I, Barbara Paluszkiewicz, am the CEO of CDN Technologies and author of IT Scams, How to Avoid Being Ripped Off. CDN Technologies is a managed service company here in Mississauga, which means we're an outsourced IT company, and we provide IT service, IT support, and IT security to local companies here in Mississauga, Toronto, and throughout North America. CDN Technologies has been doing IT since 1989, and we've seen changes. Some good, some bad, and some ugly. TikToks, ugly, horrible. So with me here today, I have Nick Espinosa. Nick is an accomplished speaker, and he regularly speaks to audiences about cybersecurity, technology, and business management. And today he's going to talk to us about TikToks. Hey, Nick, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, welcome back. Welcome back. So if people didn't listen to us talk about these smart doorbells and Ring doorbells, they're not going to know anything about Security Fanatics. So can you give them a quick overview about you and what exactly Security Fanatics does?
Sure. I am the Chief Security Fanatic of Security Fanatics. We do all things cybersecurity, cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, infrastructure, and government compliance related. And so, we basically pretty much do we run the whole gamut there. I also, I've done some TED Talks. I have a nationally syndicated radio show. I write for Forbes as well as for Smirkanish of CNN. And I don't sleep, so that's basically me.
Is that because you're dancing around, trying to create new dance moves and publish them on TikTok?
No, I would not touch TikTok at all with your 10-foot pole, not mine. I don't even want my 10-foot pole to touch TikTok. It's a real serious problem, and people just are not aware of the serious issues that we have with a company like this.
Tell me about it, because my son has TikTok, and actually you know what? I'm pretty sure he has it and he's hiding it from me, because I had to have a good chat with him about this app, because it drives me nuts, to be perfectly honest. He's constantly dancing around, and I know that the data that is stored is not being stored in this country, so it's not Canadian based, so there's that. And I think that as a mom, it can contribute to ADD. Like it's not like Ritalin, like settling everybody down. It's like hyping them all up. Recently, my son and I, we were out, and we were at Denny's and we had breakfast, and he was sitting there waiting for his food to come, and he couldn't sit still. And I was just like, Owen, you know what? Can you stop? And he's just like, okay. He couldn't. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do what he's doing. So next thing you know, you got two idiots dancing around doing the TikToks. He thought it was funny. The other people at the other tables around us thought it was funny. And I'm just like, well, this was not a mommy moment that I'm proud of, because I'm actually a little bit embarrassed. But, yes, we were having fun, so that part was good. But at the same time, I'm just like, how do I get this message across to him that this TikTok thing is not good? So tell me your perspective on it, Nick.
Yeah, well, so you brought up a couple of different things, and first things first, let's talk about the data mining. Okay. So if you're sitting in Canada or the United States and you're using TikTok, here's basically what happens with your data. they are going to store it and actually in Amazon's infrastructure. Amazon Web Services is the largest hosting provider in the world, and so it makes sense that if I'm sitting here in Chicago or you're in Toronto, that, you know, as I, let's say, take a video on TikTok, it's going to get sent to a local data center basically due to my geolocation. Same for you. Now, what people don't realize is that TikTok actually exploded onto the scene in mid to late 2018, and as of October 2018, they were during October 2018, they were the number one downloaded app on the planet. They beat the Facebooks, the Twitters, the everything of the world, and they arrived at that moment, and they have been continuing to grow and explode. They bought a company called Musical.ly, which I'll get to in a minute as well, which was a U.S.-based company that now has ties into TikTok, but TikTok is now one big app. Now, TikTok is owned by a company called Beijing ByteDance Limited, and this is a company that is based in Beijing, China, and we know that they have very deep ties to the Chinese government. The Chinese government is authoritarian in nature, and what the Chinese government likes to do, especially since they have access to these companies, which is essentially required by their law, they are collecting and gathering this information. So when I am making my video in Chicago, or you're making your video in Toronto, it's going to a local Amazon web service, but they are also have the ability to then replicate the data from Amazon in North America over to China. And these are the kinds of things that go on. We are generating a ton of content here, and the Chinese government is holding on to this, and it's allowing them to do things like build a facial recognition database on people in North America and around the world, as well as start categorizing your information and what you are doing, with the videos that you are posting. So think about it this way. And I actually wrote an article for Michael Smerconish's CNN on this called China's Destroying Our Future Leaders, where let's say you've got that 13 to 15-year-old kid and they are doing 13 to 15-year-old stupid things, on TikTok. That information, flash forward 20 years, could be used to get them in trouble, could be used as blackmail, could be used as something else because the Chinese government has access to this. And when that 15-year-old now becomes 35 or 40 years old and decides to, run for office or, is a leader in a corporation with deep ties to China, these are the things that can come back and haunt you. Not to mention the fact that China has a very different view and definition of what they consider malware than we do. So I've spent a good chunk of time in China, working for, various interests in the United States trying to defend their intellectual property. And if you install applications in China, let's say onto your computer, it will actually install a whole bunch of other applications without telling you what it's doing. And so that is perfectly fine in China. Here in North America, Canada, and the United States, we would consider that malware, and the Chinese don't care. And so they're integrating a lot of tracking technology into TikTok as well from everything that we know and we've researched. And so it just becomes a huge mess because you've got your kids going out there doing things, sometimes very risque, on TikTok, and all of this information is being collected and stored that could potentially be used against them when they are adults and in, let's say, positions of authority. And that's the real issue that we've got here. We don't know where our data goes, and when we are using something like TikTok, we have to assume that this is what's happening. And by virtue of the deep ties to the Chinese government and their history of data mining in this manner, it's very logical to believe that this is exactly what they are doing with this.
And you know what? As a parent, it's my job to keep my child safe. And it's my job to keep them safe from themselves. And it's also my job to help them make decisions in today's day for their future self. So, they could be somebody so that everything works out well for them. This isn't funny, but we recently had like a big Canadian issue here, and it was called blackface. And it was when our current Prime Minister, Trudeau, there was a picture that was circulated about him where his face was painted black. And what was weird about it is that, he's, a person of authority, he's a figurehead. This was done. This picture was like 30 years old or 20 years old. Like, he did it back when he was in, there wasn't social media back then. You know, it was a print that was done that someone scanned and now posted. And that came back to haunt him. Mind you, like, you know what, he had, like, you know what, a whole PR team that, you know what, like, addressed it in modern times, and, you know what, changed it into being, like, you know what, a person of privilege. But that was a whole story and a whole PR issue that needed to be addressed. He's the prime minister. He had the resources. Majority of people aren't going to have that. So how do you protect your child in present day to keep themselves safe so that they're not jeopardizing opportunities for their future self? Because we all do stupid things, and you had a great thing posted on your LinkedIn that I'll reference. Like, you know, in the 90s, they were great. Like, you know, no video, like you know, like no one caught it on camera. So with that moving forward, how do we make sure that these things don't haunt us? Like, how do we make sure that as a parent, what do we do for our kids to keep them safe from the TikToks that are out there?
Yeah, well, and I mean, and that's part of the issue too. You know, is that, you know, as we are entering a new era where, you know, technological adoption is pretty much the name of the game. As a parent, you have to run the balance between turning your kid into a pariah, you know, by giving him or her absolutely no access to anything, versus giving them, you know, that access that is going to allow them to still be socially interactive with their friends. And so it comes down to a couple of different things. A lot of studies have shown a correlation, not necessarily causation, but a correlation between the rise of the social media platforms like Facebook and severe depression or suicidal thoughts. You know, when they were looking at teenagers, both girls and boys, from age 13 to 19. And so the goal as we were looking at this is, okay, do I not give my son or my daughter the availability of social media until age 19, where, you know, the psychological studies say it basically plateaus. You are now more of an adult. You're a little more sure of yourself in a way that, you know, you're no longer in that awkward teenage growing up phase, that we are looking at social media as actually being harmful to, versus giving them that kind of access. And so I think running that kind of balance or keeping a tab on that is kind of important. But more, I think equally to that is, most people don't vet the apps that they are actually giving their kids. There's a lot of malicious apps out there that will get you infected on both, Android and iPhone. But understand who is making the apps that you are, that you are going through. So, for example, if I'm looking for an app, let's say it's a game, you know, and if it's kids, you know, they're gonna be wanting the games that all of their friends play. I will go through and say, okay, who owns the app? Is it based in a country that has good privacy laws that adhere to, let's say, my standard of what I want? So Europe has the GDPR. You know, Canada has very good privacy laws. The United States is pretty decent. Australia, Japan, you know, South Africa. You know, there are a lot of countries around the globe where you can develop stuff, and they are adhering to the law in their country that basically says you have to handle this data with care. And when you are looking at apps that are made outside of that, like, let's say, China, who's authoritarian, or Vietnam, who's authoritarian, or Russia, where it's completely Wild West, you know, in terms of these kinds of things, if you are downloading and installing apps from these kinds of regions, then you don't necessarily know what is going to happen with that data. So you run the balance between, you know, letting your kids do whatever they want, download absolutely anything, versus just vetting it and saying, okay, so maybe 40% of the apps that your friends have, you're not going to get, you know, but the others you can. And so you're not completely cutting that off. You're just filtering it to ensure that it is more secure, and in the long run, it's not going to harm them, you know, as let's say a functioning adult. Because quite frankly, we were all kids once, and we really didn't think of the consequences in the moment, let alone, you know, what is this video going to do to me in 20 years? You know, and one of the other things that I like to tell, you know, kids is that, you know, assume for a moment that the picture, the video, whatever that you just sent or you just posted, everybody in your school can see it, and you can never get rid of it. Would you want them to see that? Would you want them, you know, to have access to that for your entire life? And it's something that I would hope allows the kid to stop and think before they actually start posting. But, these platforms aren't going to go away. They're only going to spread, and we'll see what the next major platform is that kids adopt, especially as they see their parents adopt these platforms, then they move on. Facebook, for example, kids are pretty much a ghost town on Facebook because they don't want to be on mom and dad's social media. And so here comes Snapchat, here comes TikTok, here comes a whole bunch of others. And so understand, you can Google all of these. Like Snapchat has serious privacy violations as well, but it has a different issue than TikTok does because Snapchat is based in the United States. So I'm not worried about the data privacy laws, but they keep getting breached. And they've been fined multiple times by the Federal Trade Commission here in the United States, for not living up to their promises of privacy. This is all Googleable. This is all stuff that we can find, and a little bit of research goes a very long way to ensuring that much more privacy for your kid.
Agreed. I think what a lot of people forget is that the data that is generated, where it's stored, it abides by the privacy laws of that country.
Yes.
People forget that. But
Yes. Once your data leaves a country where you have no recourse, you're pretty much out of luck. So the United States and Canada have a very symbiotic relationship. We have been allies probably since the beginning of time. Since we kicked the British out, but if we look at it, I have zero problems whatsoever if my data was being stored in data centers in Canada in some way, shape, or form, and I don't think many Canadians would have a problem with that here in the United States. But when you are looking at countries around the world, I spend a good chunk of time when I'm looking through apps just looking up the privacy laws of the country. I didn't know that this was developed in Turkey. Can you tell me Turkey's privacy law? Turkey has a privacy law. It's not a good one, but they've got one. You know what I mean? And so these are the kinds of things that I think just go a really long way to understanding that, yes, once it's out of your hands, it's out of your hands. So it's your job to safeguard it as best you can before it leaves you. So what little tips and tools can we give our kids so that they know how to vet apps properly? Like, how do we educate them? I know you gave the examples. Do you want everybody in your school to see this? A couple of different things. Depending on the age of your kids, I would highly recommend putting parental control on mobile devices or laptops. Some kind of management where they have to have the apps approved, and then that gives the parent the ability to actually vet the app. One of the problems that we have is that if you just hand over a phone to a kid, it's completely wide open. You can Google literally everything, good, bad, and horrifically ugly, in the same way they can go to the App Store and download every stupid thing that looks interesting, and on the Android side there, you've got a higher rate for app infection, but iPhones get infected too this way. So it's something that I think requires a little bit of filtering. You're not telling the kid, no, you can't have this app. You're saying we have to check the app, and if the app is, let's say, sitting in a country or being developed in a country that has horrible privacy laws, then it doesn't make sense to have this app. It's not safe. Also, look for things like the manufacturer. So both in the App Store and in Google Play, if you pull up, as an example, like a Disney app, because Disney has a million different apps for kids, the publisher will say Disney. It won't say Disney 1 or Disney 10 or Build Disney or whatever. No, it'll say Disney, and make sure that what you are looking at is an actual legitimate app from an actual legitimate company. And if it is a legitimate company, one that, let's say, it's top 10 million downloads or whatever, then go look up where the company is based. And if they're not based out of, like a San Francisco or a Toronto or something like that, then that should be a red flag right out of the gate.
What do you think the key benefit is of using TikTok? Like, why is it so popular amongst kids?
Well, we have a changing understanding of what privacy is. I'm actually putting together a presentation for this that I'll be giving in about a month. But if we look at this, we have, as let's say, older generations, start to adopt technology, and obviously adopt technology at a much slower rate, people are comfortable sharing what they share. And TikTok is geared towards that generation that was born with a camera in their face, a smartphone to keep them quiet in a restaurant, when the parents were talking. This is a group that that basically lives and breathes this. They also gain status, there's been psychological tests of this. They gain status by either the likes, the shares, the followers that they get, or if you're looking at things like call-out culture where, let's say there's, you mentioned Prime Minister Trudeau, for example, there's going to be a form of this where people are going to be, I don't want to say mock outraged, but they're going to exacerbate the situation, and they tend to be the most vocal online because they believe that gains status. And so when we are looking at something like a TikTok, it ends up being simply that. You've got an entire generation that is willing to share, is willing to try to one-up themselves, looks at other platforms and says, this is a way that I can make myself publicly known. There's also been other surveys done by kids aged 12 to 18, and what has been climbing the ranks of what do you want to be when you grow up, and it's no longer like astronaut or this. I mean, those are still on the thing, but YouTuber is now something that nobody saw coming, and now a lot of kids say, well, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to monetize my ability to do stupid things online and make money off of it.
Oh my God, that's like a whole nother segment in itself. I said that's a whole other segment in itself with YouTube, because that's another thing that my kids are completely, like the whole YouTube thing and how this person is making millions and millions of dollars. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly it, And so you've got people on YouTube that are just, quite frankly, I think kind of horrible people, like Logan Paul. He seems like a complete jerk, but he's making millions of dollars, appealing to that demographic. And so when you are looking at this and you're thinking, okay, these kids are doing things that I would never do, well, yeah, you didn't have a camera in your face. You didn't have this impetus society-wide that everybody around you in your social network, your non-technical social network, is also doing to move that ball forward. So you're comfortable sharing things that we would consider private. Like medical information. I look at my personal Facebook page, and there are people there very comfortable sharing detailed medical information to their friends. They're using it as a personal therapy group, and they don't realize that, at least here in the United States, because, we have insurance companies, our insurance companies can data mine that. And so if you are going on Facebook saying, you told your insurance company here in the United States, I live a very sedentary life, I rarely leave the home, and your Facebook page is you jumping out of airplanes and rock climbing, your insurance company can come back and say, we're raising your premium because you lied to us, or we're dropping your coverage. So when we are looking at these kinds of things, we don't necessarily think of the ramifications, and we don't understand that the goal of these platforms is to monetize us. So it's a lot of everything that goes into this, but there is a psychological drive, in younger people to do this because, quite frankly, it's all around them. Everybody is doing this. Even their teachers, are saying, okay, go online. We're going to use Google to get to homework, or go Google this or look this up or whatever. So it's pervasive in society. It's not going anywhere. And by virtue of that, I think that's why we have to really be aware and take care of what we let our kids use.
Yes, I think that was one of the most important things that I got from our chat today, is that we need to be aware of the apps that our kids are using, and that some of them are not safe. You have to be careful that they're from a country that we're comfortable with, because lots of times they're giving, you wouldn't want, the dark web is expanding, and you don't want your private information about your child out there being creeped by creepers of, a different country, because their laws are different. Wow. Yeah, and actually that was a huge issue. Musical.ly has basically been accused of as a haven for child predators. Musical.ly is now folded into TikTok. Yes.
And so you have child predators basically looking at this kind of stuff, on TikTok. Now, whether they're capitalizing on it and trying to contact these children, I mean, I guess that would be a case-by-case basis. But the point is that platforms like this, which, let's say in theory are meant to be fun and open and collaborative and all this kind of stuff, you've got to know who's watching you. You've got to know where your data's going. It's kind of one of those things that, you're gonna end up having a lot of information out there that you just simply can't get back and you can't destroy because it's gone. It's in a country like China where they don't care and they're not going to listen to it.
Yes. So on that note, what is the most important thing you've ever learned? You already told us about the Beastie Boys song, so do you have another?
The most important thing I've ever learned. Well, I will, for my personal life, it was the Beastie Boys, be true to yourself and you will never fail. And I would say in my business life, the most important lesson that I've ever learned is to be the best person that I can be, to be the best human that I can be, the best manager that I can be. My goal in life should be to remove obstacles. If I can help you remove an obstacle in your life to help you succeed, to help you perform, to help you be the person that you need to be, then I have succeeded as a human being, as a manager, as a spouse, as a, whatever you are. And I think that's something that if we were able to internalize, I would hope it makes the world a little better.
It makes perfect sense to me, Nick, and I think you might be my brother from another mother because I was brought up with that saying, just be the best you can be. No matter what, in this situation, be the best you can be, and that's something that I share with my kids all the time. That was rule number 2. Rule number 1 was if anything happens, just tell them Mama's going to knock you out. My mom was going to knock you out. And rule number 2 is just be the best you can be. So thank you very much, Nick, for chatting with us again on No Tech Talk about TikToks. It was
pleasure.
awesome. Very insightful. Thank you. So everyone, you've been listening to Nick Espinosa. And if you have any questions about your IT vulnerabilities or questions about your computer environments or IT security, call me 905-542-9759 or visit cdntechnologies.com, and you can always get me direct at barbrap.tv.
Don't you tell me to stop. You stick around and make it put your heart. Never beyond what you can die.